and tonight we're not only pouring drinks. Welcome to the first episode of my new ASMR series, Pouring a Mystery. So, this will be a series where we zip our way through strange cases and creepy disappearances, twisted timelines, and stories that leave us all wondering what actually happened. So grab your glass, get comfortable, and listen closely, because tonight I will pour you a mystery. So tonight we're going to talk about 4 missing people cases, stories that sound almost impossible. Since this is the first time I'm doing this, I still have a script that I probably am gonna heavily read from. I have not memorized these stories quite yet, and I just wanted to get these series out because I was so excited for it. So I'm still not exactly sure if I should do it in a slow voice or whispered. So I'm still trying to figure that out, and I'm glad for your feedbacks in the comments below. I hope you guys are going to enjoy this series, and let's hop into tonight's stories. The series contains of me always mixing a drink before the show, and the recipe will be posted as a short, so you can mix these drinks for yourself while listening to this. Not all the cocktails are going to be with alcohol, some are going to be mocktails and a sleep based, so I thought that was a cute twist. I won't ramble like this all the time, just because this is the first time. So let's get into tonight's stories. We're going to talk about 4 missing person stories, like I just said, and mostly they sound impossible to be true, like a man that walks into a bar but is never clearly seen leaving it again, or a 7-year-old boy that is left on a forest road near in northern Japan and 6 nights later just appears again alive inside a military hut. A 4-year-old boy that vanishes in the Rocky Mountains National Park before a strange sighting is reported high above the place where he went missing. That one is actually the creepiest story. However, I want to say one thing. These are all real people and real cases, so some of them are still missing, and I want to treat these type of stories with care and being considerate towards the families that have endured these missing cases. So I researched them all and just went by the facts that I found on newspaper articles and some police reports, and I just included netizens' theories, and it's clearly separated. So please also make sure to be respectful in the comments and with your theories, if you should want to share them. But without further ado, let's start with the first story. The case of Brian Shaffer, the man who walked into a bar. So, like I said, don't mind me, I'm going to have to read some of the script, but it's going to be relaxing anyways. So, Brian Randall Shaffer was 27 years old when he disappeared from Columbus, Ohio, in the early morning of April 1st, 2006. He was a medical student at Ohio State University. He was tall, around 6'2", with brown hair and hazel eyes. He played the guitar, he loved music. He had a pearl jam tattoo on his upper arm, on the right arm to be exact. And according to people who knew him, he was funny, charismatic, outgoing, and on his way to becoming a doctor. But the week before his disappearance had not been easy. Brian's mother, Renee, had recently died from cancer. He had been studying intensely for the medical school exams, and he was tired. Spring break was beginning, and he was planning a trip to Florida with his girlfriend, Alexis. So, on that evening of March 31st, Brian had dinner with his dad, Randy. Later, he spoke with his brother Derek and invited him to go out that night, but Derek declined, and he couldn't make it. It would be the last time he would have seen his brother or heard from him. So, that night Brian went out with his friends and former roommate Clint Florence. They began the evening at the Ugly Tuna Saloon, which is actually a pretty cool name, a bar near the Ohio State campus. At some point, Brian also called his girlfriend Alexis, who then was away visiting family. They spoke briefly. By later accounts, he seemed excited about her upcoming trip. As the night continued, Brian and Clint visited other bars, and later were joined by another friend that was called Meredith Reed, who drove them back to the Ugly Tuna Saloon at around 1:15. The bar was busy. There was music and people were drinking. It was the beginning of spring break, and the atmosphere was loud, casual, and pretty much normal. Around closing time, Brian was seen outside the bar talking to two women. Then at 1:55 a.m. he appeared to turn and go back towards the bar. After that, the trail goes cold. When the bar closed, Clint and Meredith Clint and Meredith. When the bar closed, Clint and Meredith could not find him. They called him, they looked around, eventually assumed he had gone home on his own. But Brian had not gone home. The next day his girlfriend tried calling, and it went to voicemail. At first she thought maybe he was sleeping, but then another day passed. His father checked his apartment, his car was still there, his bed was made, his medical books were on the shelves, and then Brian missed his flight to Florida. That was when worry turned into panic. Police began searching the area around the Ugly Tuna, and they checked hospitals, homeless shelters, dumpsters, nearby construction areas, and the banks of Olentangy River. I hope I pronounced that correctly. They interviewed people who had been with Brian that night, so Meredith, Clint, but also the bar staff, the woman seen on camera, and even the band that had been performing, to see if they could find any clues on where he could have gone. But the strangest part remained the camera footage. Brian had been seen at the bar. He had been seen near closing time. He had seemingly gone back inside. So there's footage of him actually entering back into the bar, but no confirmed footage ever showed him leaving the bar. So there were cameras at the main exits. There was also a possibility of construction exit, but it would have been difficult to use, especially after someone had been drinking. So what happened? Let's hop into the netizen theories. So the facts are that he had been with people he had known. He had talked to strangers, but he had been seen going back inside, where presumably his friends had not seen him anymore, and there was no footage of him ever leaving. So, what exactly could have happened to him? These are the facts, and now we are going to hop into some theories that people had on his disappearance. So these are all just thoughts that netizens shared, and nothing proven or factual. Brian Shaffer is at this moment still missing, and he was never found again. So one theory is that Brian left for a route the cameras did not capture, maybe through the construction area. So that's one popular theory. And maybe through a service exit, maybe he simply slipped past the view of the cameras in the chaos of closing time. But the camera footage was viewed intensely since he went missing, so... But it could be, of course. Another theory is that he did leave, but then had an accident. So he could have fallen, become disoriented, or ended up somewhere searchers couldn't find him. But let's be honest, it's 20 years ago. So I guess, in my opinion, if he would have had an accident, by now, somewhere, somehow, they would have had to find him. Or maybe I'm wrong. So some people also wondered if he chose to disappear. He had been grieving, he had had a stressful time and school pressure, and may even have felt overwhelmed. But this theory is difficult for many who knew him, because he left behind his car, his father, his family, his girlfriend, and his friends, and he was just about to go on a trip. So also he left his entire future behind, and from what people were telling about him, he was passionate about becoming a doctor. So others have suspected foul play. Maybe he left with someone, maybe someone harmed him after he left the bar, but no public evidence has ever proven that, and so the mystery remains. Brian Shaffer entered a busy bar on a normal night out and somehow vanished in one of the most watched, crowded places imaginable. So, what are your thoughts and theories on his disappearance? Was it foul play? But then, why was he never seen leaving the bar? I believe there must have been an exit that he used and probably gotten into either an accident or it was foul play. But let me know in the comments. In case you're wondering, this is not a second drink. You should never do that. It has magnesium, so I would get too tired if I drank 2 of them, like overdose of magnesium. I just topped it off with the soda can that still had soda inside. So the second case today is the one of Yamato Tanoka, the boy in the military hut. So this story takes place in Japan. Oh, yeah. Our second story therefore takes place... Our second story therefore takes us to Hokkaido in northern Japan in May 2016, so 10 years ago. 7-year-old Yamato Tanoka was on a family trip with his parents and sister. According to reports, he had been misbehaving, throwing stones at cars and people, and his parents became angry First, they told the police that Yamato had disappeared while the family was gathering wild vegetable. But later, they admitted they had made him get out of the car and at a mountain road as punishment. They drove away. When they returned a short time later, Yamato was gone. The area was forested, remote, and frightening. There were concerns about bears, and it rained. Temperatures dropped at night, and search teams spread out through the forest. Police, firefighters, volunteers, and self-defense force members searched for days. For an entirety of 6 nights, Yamato was missing. People began to fear the worst. How could a 7-year-old survive in the forest without food? Where would he have gone? And why had there been no signs of him? Then, on the morning of June 3rd, soldiers entered a small military hut on training areas several kilometers from where Yamato had disappeared. Inside, curled up between mattresses, was a little boy. When asked his name, he said he was Yamato Tanoka. He was hungry, he was thirsty, he had only minor injuries, and he had survived by drinking water from the tap outside the hut and sleeping between mattresses to keep him warm. The fact of this case is that this little boy was 7 years old and set out in the wilderness to fend for himself while his family drove off. Probably it was supposed to be silly prank or like a little punishment like parents do sometimes when kids don't want to obey, but it turned out not so funny in the end and could have ended fatally. The boy was found several kilometers from where he was left, and now these are the facts, but what are the theories on how he actually managed to survive these 6 days without food, shelter, or water? We have already cleared up the water thing, but as for the rest, we shall dive into the theories right now. So the most realistic theory is the most astonishing one. Yamato simply walked. Frightened and upset, he may have tried to follow his family car, lost his senses of direction, and ended up at this military hut, and taking roads and paths that led him away from the search area. Searchers later suggested that they had looked in places where they thought a child would likely go, but Yamato did not go where the adults expected. He moved farther than people imagined. Some people online wondered whether someone helped him, but there is no solid evidence for a mystery helper. The available reports suggest he survived through a combination of fear, movement, shelter, and extraordinary luck. There is one detail, though, that makes this story even stranger. The soldiers had repeatedly checked the hut where he had been hiding. There is one detail, however, that makes this story even stranger than it already is. The soldiers had been checking this hut earlier during the searches, and they had never found anything that was unusual, so they had not seen him. Why he was found then remains unclear. In the end, Yamato survived. His father publicly apologized. The story became a miracle survival case and a painful reminder how quickly a child can disappear. 6 nights in a cold forest, no food, no one seeing him, not even inside the hut. And then, behind the doors of a quiet military hut, a child waiting to be found. But the one thing that rubs me personally the wrong way about this story is that they were inside these huts. That they were inside this hut repeatedly during the 6 days where he was being searched. So, in my mind, when you're a 7-year-old boy that hides there from the cold, that managed to survive this long and walk several kilometers to find shelter, wouldn't you be ecstatic if you hear people entering the hut? Wouldn't you guess they were there to save you? So why didn't he say anything? Maybe he was scared. Maybe he wasn't there. So what are your thoughts? I would think it would have been interesting to ask the boy about what happened, but I couldn't find any reports on that, which is unfortunate. So leave your guesses in the comments below, because your guesses are as good as mine. Our third story is about a toddler called Yoshiko, the toddler found sitting on the rock. Our third story takes us to Yashirojima, or also known as Suo-Oshima, an island in Yamaguchi Prefecture, Japan. It was August 2018, in the middle of summer. A little boy named Yoshiki Fujimoto had come to the island with his family to visit his great-grandfather. He was only 2 years old. In matter of fact, he would actually turn 2 during the days he went missing. On the morning of August 12th, Yoshiki was walking with his older brother and grandfather near his great-grandfather's home. According to reports, the 2 boys began walking ahead. At some point, Yoshiki turned around, apparently wanting to return back home. To the house. So his grandfather believed that the little boy had gone back safely. But Yoshiki had not returned. And just like that, the toddler had disappeared. The search began quickly. Police, firefighters, local residents, and volunteers searched the area. They looked through roads, houses, ditches, and nearby mountains. But day turned into night, and Yoshiki was not found. For a child that young, every hour mattered. So, the island was hot, the terrain was wooded and uneven. A 2-year-old wouldn't not understand how to find help, how to explain where he was, or how to survive alone for long. But one day passed, then another, then a third. At the morning of August 15th, hope was becoming thinner. That was when a 78-year-old volunteer named Haruo Obata arrived to help. He was known in Japan for volunteering after disasters and searches. Unlike some searches, he believed that children often climb upward instead of downward when they are lost. So he went towards the mountain. As he searched, he called out Yoshiki's nickname, Yo-chan. Yo-chan. Then from somewhere nearby, a faint little voice answered, "Here." Obata found Yoshiki, alive in the mountain, reportedly sitting on a rock nearby a stream. The little boy was barefoot or lightly dressed, according to the reports, with only minor scratches. He was weak and hungry, but alive. After 3 days alone, a 2-year-old boy had survived. The most realistic theory here is that Yoshiki turned back, lost his direction almost immediately, and wandered up into the mountain area, because adults often imagine children staying close to roads or houses. Searchers may have focused too much on where he was expected to be and not where a lost child might actually go. Another theory is that Yoshiki survived because he stayed near water. Some reports describe him being found close to a stream or wet area. If he had access to water, that may explain how he survived the heat for these 3 days. People also focused on Haruo Obata himself. His intuition became part of the story. He believed children tend to move upward, and in this case, well, that belief helped him search and find at the right place. There were, of course, emotional questions too, like how could a toddler travel so far? Why had no one heard him earlier? How had he avoided a serious injury? And guys, these are the questions that I also have. I mean, I could reason with a boy older than 2 years traveling for quite a long distance upward into the mountains. But 2 years old, and mind you, keep in mind, it was barely 2 years, so he turned 2. He was 1 the day he went missing, so am I underestimating toddlers, or is this just strange? What are your theories? Because I'm quite at a loss here. I mean, it could have been that he stayed close to water and that is how he survived, but how did he get there? And was there water all the time? Or did he travel and find the water later? That's also important in my opinion, and unfortunately, with 2 years old, you can't exactly answer all these questions. But leave your thoughts in the comments below. So, we're arriving to the 4th and last story for today, and it is the most spine-chilling and strange in my opinion. This is the case of Alfred Beilhartz, the boy on the impossible ledge. Our final story takes us back to 1938, to the Rocky Mountain National Park in Colorado. So I think this even is one of the missing 411 stories, if I'm not wrong. Alfred Edwin Beilhartz was a 4-year-old. He was the youngest child in a large Denver family. Over the 4th of July weekend, the Beilhartz family went camping near Fall River with friends. On the morning of July 3rd, Alfred went with his father, William, to a nearby stream. Some family friends were also nearby. Afterward, Alfred was supposed to return to the camp with them, but when the others came back, Alfred was not with them. At first, everyone unlikely thought he had simply wandered a short distance away. He was a small child, he couldn't have traveled that far. But the minutes passed, the more time passed, Soon the family called for help. Searchers arrived quickly. Park rangers, volunteers, and members of the Civilian Conservation Corps searched the area. Bloodhounds were brought in. The river was searched. At one point, even the water was diverted, so the river could be checked. Nothing was found. No body, no clothing, no clear trace. At first many thought Alfred had maybe fallen into the water. That would have been tragic, but an understandable explanation. But when the river search found nothing, other possibilities began to grow. Maybe he had wandered into the woods. Maybe an animal had taken him. Maybe someone had taken him. Then came the strangest reported sighting. Some hikers in another part of the park claimed they saw a small boy on a high rocky area known as the Devil's Nest, near Mount Chapin. The location was far from where Alfred had disappeared and seemed incredibly difficult for a 4-year-old to search on its own. According to later retellings of the report, the child appeared to be sitting on a ledge, then suddenly was pulled backward by someone or something out of sight. Searchers were sent to investigate, but they found nothing. This is the detail that makes the case feel almost impossible. If the sighting was Alfred, how did he travel so far? Who or what pulled him back? And why was there no trace? Well, these are the facts, and we are going to look at the theories now. One theory is that Alfred drowned and was simply never recovered, but the river search made that feel less certain to his family, since he wasn't even found when the river was drained or rediverted. Another theory is that he wandered away and died from exposure in terrain searchers missed. This sadly is possible. Small children can move unpredictably, hide when afraid, or end up in places adults do not expect. Another theory is abduction. Alfred's father reportedly believed his son may have been taken. Later, a ransom note was sent to the family, but the police considered it a hoax. The Devil's Nest sighting may also have been a mistake. Distance, fear, hope, and mountain terrain can distort what people think they see. The hikers may have seen something else, or someone else, or nothing connected to Alfred at all. But the image stayed with the case. A child come from a campsite, a river searched and emptied, a family waiting, and somewhere high above, a report of a small boy on a ledge where he should not have been. This is actually a very, very spine-chilling story, especially because he appeared to be drawn in by something if the sighting is plausible. But even if that's a hoax, and even if they did not in fact see Alfred that day, what did they see? And where did he go? Because even if he went missing under normal circumstances, it was a moment and he was gone. The area was searched quickly, so how could he have gone so quickly where nobody could have found him? Well, I guess that will forever remain a mystery. I hope you enjoyed today's stories. These were all very different stories. missing forever. I hope you found these stories interesting and you could relax nonetheless. They are